And I'll echo everyone else by thanking Dr. Bostom for organizing this. I think it's very important. There's a lot of perspectives. A lot of people were hurt by a very sloppy response, unthinking response. And can't happen again. So I was going to start off with a video. We've got a little bit of question about whether it's going to come through clearly. So I'm going to give Andy the links to a couple of videos that I was going to show. I think they highlight just how backwards and illogical, irrational the response was. My particular area was school masking. Really just made no sense to me. It was unjustifiable to me. It was clearly harmful to children. And so I got involved in the lawsuit. And my wife and I got a really good look under the covers of what was going on at the Department of Health, how they were interpreting and kind of massaging data to push forward a narrative and a policy. We saw how the school committee responded, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Saw the governor, the Department of Health, just based in the Department of Education, kind of just flicked away parents and their concerns and said, you know, we're keeping people safe. And we looked at each other after the next mask mandate came out in December of 2021. We all remember the one that came out right before Christmas in 2021. And we looked at each other and we said, he's going to high school in 2023. Are we going to stay here and put him through high school for 4 years and see what happens? Or are we going to do something else? And we started planning to do something else. And that plan is going to come to fruition at the end of next month when we close on the sale of our home here, get in a U-Haul truck, and head to our new home in New Hampshire. We're done. Rep Chip's here. He's my rep, my local rep. Take a message to your colleagues. People moving into my house, one is retired, one is nearing retirement. Their children are out of state, doing other things. Retired people don't generate income and tax revenue. There's a child in this room who's not going to start a household one day in this state. The Southwells do it. It's not a big deal. It becomes a thing, it becomes a real problem at budget time. Let your colleagues know. So I got 3 takeaways from this. We're leaving, okay? But I got 3 takeaways that I learned from this experience that is absolutely vital for parents to know. Number 1, at the beginning of this thing in August of 2021, you were all offered a false choice by your school committees. We can either mask those children, or if there's a breakout, we're going to have to go back to remote learning, and we don't want any of that. And it was a very cynical, sinister, almost said a bad word, ploy, and it was being played out in my school district, across the state, across the country. It was in a playbook. Because they knew that the only thing that parents hate more than masking children is remote learning. And so they give you a crap choice. And so I stood up in front of my school committee and I said, there's not only 2 choices here. There's a third choice. And it goes something like this. I pull my kid out and we homeschool. When he leaves, 14 grand goes out the door with him in federal and state funding. Again, if the Southwells do it, not a big deal. If it becomes a thing, you have a huge problem at budget time. Good luck to you. And so we pulled them out. And we've really, since the beginning of COVID, we've homeschooled. Because we weren't going to do it. Do not let anyone in government offer you a false choice like that. There are options. Take work, might take financial sacrifice. I've given up career advancement, lots of income. But I'm comfortable with the decision, don't regret it in the least, and I sleep really well at night. Second thing, local control. Fundamental principle of American government. Keep decision-making as low down the totem pole as possible. It starts with the individual and the household, then it goes to the town, then it goes to the state, then it goes to federal. That always, always, always should be as low as possible. Funny thing happened. The most egregious loss of local control ever, and it wasn't the executive order. Parents in the summer of 2021 started going to the school committees and saying, hey guys, we're not going to mask this year, right? The school committees were getting nervous and they're starting to sweat. There's a lot of pressure because they know they're local politicians. They can be replaced like that. You get a little bit of money, a little bit of organization, and we'll get you out of there in no time. Just need candidates. And so they got nervous. The union was barking at them. Oh, we need masks, gotta have masks. And so the first local control issue there is who should be making this decision. And at that point, we're a year and a half into the pandemic. We had a crummy school year the year before with the kids in masks and all the other crazy protocols that were going on in the schools. So the first question at that point was, who should be making this decision at this point? Is it a parental decision, the very lowest, do it at the household level, the very lowest level of the hierarchy? Or do we let the town do it? That would be your local school committee. Well, the cowards in the school committees and the superintendents and the administrators said, oh, we don't want this responsibility. I don't have a white coat. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a school committee member. And so they begged the Department of Health. They begged the governor for a mask mandate. And they got it. And so that loss of local control, not only was it taken out of your household, they took it and tossed it up to the state. And once it goes to the state, it ain't coming back, and you're only getting nowhere with them. And that is why we've been in court for the better part of a year and a half. Do not let your local control go. Fight for it. Funny story about New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, most of the towns went back to school that year wearing masks. However, every one of those decisions was made at the local school committee level. Because in New Hampshire, local control is highly prized and fiercely defended. They don't want the state doing anything for them. And so those town meetings were uncomfortable, they were loud, they were divisive, but the decisions were made at the local level. And if you were in Littleton not wearing masks, and you were playing White Mountains, who was wearing masks in a basketball game, for example, home court rules. If the local district had masks, your players wore masks regardless. You were playing, you can't make this stuff up. You're going to if you're playing in a district that didn't have masks, nobody wore masks. The competitors didn't wear masks. That's just the way it was. Interestingly, nobody died, right? Nobody got sick, and they just kind of got through it. Whereas here we had the craziness. So that's local control, very important as well. The third and final thing is the power of your participation. Funny story. Now, January of 2022, the emergency period is coming to an end. Dan McKee's getting nervous because there won't be any more federal dollars to take advantage of, right? Because that's why we do this stuff. That's why we're in a state of emergency right now, right? We got to take advantage of the federal dollars. He's getting nervous, right? So he's like, I need more power. I got to extend this thing a little bit longer. Parents got wind of that, and they said, oh no, we're not doing this anymore. And so on February 1st, and I've got a video that I will send to, we'll get it out there, there was a hearing. It was the first public hearing I think we had had since COVID started. And I showed up for that hearing because I was like, look, we got to get these masks off these kids. We're done here. You guys got to make this stop. And Blake Filippi, who was the Republican leader at the time, Mike's predecessor, came up, introduced himself, said, hey, great job with the lawsuit. I said, hey, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming over and introduce yourself. I said, so we're going to get something done tonight, right? He looks at me and he says, well, we're playing for April, right? We want to get some positioning for April. And he clearly had zero clue whatsoever of what was about to happen, because what happened was that meeting room filled up. 600 people that night testified almost exclusively. We don't care about the federal dollars. We don't care about those, right? We wanted the masks off the kids. And 600 people testified in the Senate and in the House that night. Much of it was by remote because the Senate wasn't even doing live hearings at that point. 600 people. Nobody knows what the official tally was. You could go on Capitol TV and probably sit through the entire thing. My guess was about 597 to 3, get the masks off the kids. And that situation turned on a dime. All of a sudden, the votes that were supposed to be taken about extending the emergency powers got rescheduled. And there were meetings. There were some whispers, what's going on? And in the end, of course we got the dollars, right? But the masks came off the kids, and that was only because the General Assembly got very nervous when the pitchforks and the torches came out, very politely, in a very dignified way. But there was no question that these parents were this doesn't happen in Rhode Island. People were sitting at home watching Capitol television on hold, waiting for their opportunity to lambast their lawmakers and get the goddamn mask off the kids. Doesn't happen here. They're watching, whatever, The Bachelor, whatever else. We had people packed in that room, everybody just hammering, and we've got some of that footage from that night. But that the mask only came off the kids when they did because people finally stuck their feet in the ground, dug in, and said, no more, and I mean it. And the General Assembly said, they mean it. And so there it went. So you got to participate. Like this stuff, if you don't participate and if you don't get up and participate, don't get up in anybody's face, but if you don't let your voice be heard and you don't take the time to know what's going on, this stuff will continue because there are parts of this state, whether it's the teachers' unions, certain elements of government, most of them, present company accepted, and I mean that, they get up every morning looking to enhance their power, their prestige at your expense. And if you're not awake to that and not aware of it, or if you think it's not happening, I am here to tell you it is happening every day while you are living your life. Quack, quack. Come on in. What, 14 or 15 years old? But while you are living your lives, taking care of your kids, going to work, doing the activities, they're just working against you. They're taking your money, they're taking your freedom, they're telling you what you have to do with your kids, how to educate your kids, and what your kids have to think. And that is what their sole purpose in life is to do. And so you gotta find some time to get involved and turn the tide in this state. It has to happen. Otherwise, you're going to continue getting more of the same, and it will get worse. So one other little soliloquy here for, if we start running education in this state the way we as parents run our child's activities and their youth sports leagues and their travel soccer, we'll get this thing fixed in about a week. Because if your kid's soccer league was being run the way the educational system was, you wouldn't be having it. You'd be running for the board, you'd be withholding money, whatever you needed to do to get changes enacted. And so you have to take that same level of intensity. As important as soccer practice is, the local school committee meeting has to be just as important. It's got to have the same priority on your calendar. Otherwise, this stuff will not change. And I'm here a year and a half later, we're still in court. So the wheels of justice turn really, really slowly, and we don't get to hit the pause button on our kids as they grow up. He gets, interestingly enough, my 14-year-old is here. He gets a day older every day. True story. Every day he's a little bit older. I've got 18 years with him, and then he's gone. So you want to fight it out in court, or do you want to go off and live your life, or do you want to change the life that you have here? Choice is yours. So I'll take questions at any point after we get it through everybody. Yeah, at the end. And Andy?
Thank you, Rich. As you see, Rich is extraordinarily eloquent. It's been a pleasure working with him.